I'm here with you today together with my colleague Paul Sengeh, who is also online. We're doing this presentation together. I'm sitting here in Stockholm in Sweden. I'm a researcher at the Karolinska Institute. Mr. Sengeh is the Director of Research and Evaluation at Focus 1000 in Freetown in Sierra Leone. And we, a few weeks ago, published a study together with all our colleagues around debunking misinformation, which may have lessons for the COVID infodemic. So we're happy to share with that about the results with you today. Here's the overview of the paper. It was published a few weeks ago, as said. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a background before Mr. Sengeh is telling you more about the drama. In the academic literature, I'm sure you've also discussed all these things already in your training. There have been various studies trying to debunk misinformation. Most of them done so more in psychological studies. And there are a few lessons that we took with us before designing our study. And that was successful ways of debunking include providing a plausible alternative, making sure that you have credible sources giving the debunking information, making sure it's in line with worldviews, social norming, and that there's a repetition of the message. Another way of debunking that is explored is that you don't mention the misinformation at all. And you see this often with authorities right now in the pandemic that just focus on the facts or on the information at hand and don't really continue mentioning misinformation. But there are quite some limitations of the evidence so far. Very few studies target actual health misinformation. Or real life misinformation. And with that, I mean that often in studies, there is constructed misinformation. So participants come in for a study, they read something, and then later on that turns out to be wrong. So it's really done for the study purpose. And very few studies take place in communities. And as far as we know, none of them have done so in a low income setting. So that's why we thought we're going to do the contagious misinformation trial. In Sierra Leone, of course, we first had to figure out what kind of misinformation there was to debunk. And with a lot of exploring in Freetown, we found that there is this issue called Typhoid-Malaria. And this is quite specific to Sierra Leone. There's this widespread belief that typhoid and malaria commonly co-occur. And often people actually get diagnosed with typhoid-malaria in health centers. That's also due to diagnostic tools that are not optimal, that actually come back positive or are more likely to come back positive when you have a malaria infection. So people also get prescribed antibiotics often, and probably often unnecessarily, to treat typhoid. And how people talk about it is also quite interesting. So people really say typhoid and malaria walk on the same road, or typhoid and malaria are friends. And because this link with malaria, many people believe that typhoid is caused by mosquitoes, just like malaria. So we wanted to try to see if we could debunk this, and specifically our aims were to try to reduce the belief that typhoid is caused by mosquitoes and to reduce the belief that typhoid and malaria always co-occur. That was the main focus of the trial. And Mr. Sengeh will take over now and tell more about the drama.
Thank you very much, Mike. Yes, this became a big problem, this misinformation, and it had some particular bad influences on the intervention in terms of malaria management in the country, as it is very endemic. But the good thing about Sierra Leone is that we've having dramas over radios and sometimes over TV. And several current issues are discussed in drama, and people actually get together at the end of the day to listen to this radio or TV programs. Now, quite recently, in terms of social media, WhatsApp applications on telephones can also be recorded. The videos can be recorded, and people can sit over, not wherever they are, once they have a mobile phone to look at that. So for this trial, we decided to debunk this misinformation between typhoid and malaria. And therefore, we use trusted sources. We have drama groups in Sierra Leone. One of them is the Freetown players that we use to produce drama in terms of messages that will lead to the debunking of these messages. Again, as Michael said, we studied what normally takes place across the world using audio dramas. And now our intervention was set up in such a way that we provided episodes, in fact, 4 episodes into different groups to provide information relating to correct information about malaria and correct information about typhoid. And since we wanted to make it such a way, we had 2 intervention groups. Drama group 1 was the plausible alternative, where we explicitly mentioned the misinformation with regard to management or even sources of malaria and typhoid. And we provided plausible alternatives over this misinformation. In the drama 2, we provided information but avoided actually mentioning the misinformation, and then we focused on the correct information about typhoid. Yes, let's go. And of course, like I've told you, we are using the application. There are many more people in the country that have mobile phones other than radios or TVs. So we went through mobile phones and using WhatsApp, those people who have WhatsApp on their mobile phones, and presented this drama to them in the 4 episodes. Let's go. I will ask also now, she was the main research person. Maike will go through the methodology of how we recruited the participants in a baseline and follow-up survey.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is the overall structure of our study. So we started by recruiting people, around 750 people in Freetown. Together with Focus 1000, went out to the communities and had our ways to find people with WhatsApp who had a phone with WhatsApp. We did a baseline survey to understand what people's baseline knowledge was about typhoid and malaria. And then we randomized people into 3 groups. So as Mr. Sengeh already mentioned, group 1 and 2 were the intervention groups with the different types of dramas. And group 3 was the control group. And this control group received jingles about breastfeeding. So a topic that was completely unrelated to typhoid and malaria. And about 8 weeks after that, we went back and to all the participants and did a follow-up survey to see, of course, like if the dramas had any kind of effect. The inclusion criteria were that we only included adults. Of course, you needed to have WhatsApp, no hearing limitations because you needed to be able to listen to it. And it was in Creole. So people need to be fluent in that. I will quickly show you the main results. I don't think we have time for a very thorough analysis here, but this is the result of our intention to treat analysis. This figure shows on the x-axis the odds ratios and shows the different odds ratios for the groups and the different outcomes. So on top, we see typhoid from mosquitoes, group 1, so the explicit misinformation group. You see that there is an odds ratio of 0.29, which is very much below 1, which means it's a protective factor. So the dramas help to reduce the belief in misinformation there quite strongly. In group 2, so the one where we only focus on the facts, you see it's also below 1, but has a wider confidence interval, and actually it's not quite significant. And for the other outcome, that typhoid and malaria co-occur, we see a similar trend, whereby group 1 had a very strong protective effect. And group 2, in that one was significant, also had a protective effect, but with a larger confidence interval. And we also looked at a few secondary outcomes. And I have to say that this is self-reported information here. So this is self-reported behaviors. So the first one is sleeping under a bed net. And of course, that is really good for malaria, and it should absolutely be done, but it doesn't help you to avoid typhoid. And you can see that group 1 was less likely to report they sleep on their bed net to avoid typhoid than the control group. For group 2, there was no difference there. And for drinking treated water, which of course is really great to do to avoid typhoid infection, you can see both groups were significantly more likely to report they were drinking water, treated water. Of course, this is self-reported, so we can't be for sure that people actually do what they say. Mr. Sengeh will talk you through the recommendations that we think can be used from our study.
Using these results, we thought that this could be possible recommendations using audio dramas to debunk information. First of all, we think that to be able to do this, we have to focus, you have to engage with misinformation. It works better than focusing on facts only. You know, when people are told what the situation is, the truth is, probably they forget about the fact that the information can be modeled by the misinformation they have, the rumors and all that. So if we want to do audio drama, probably we need to have a mix of that. But in doing that, there is a conflict in the drama groups when you have it. People want to project their own misinformation messages in the drama. Well, we have now realized that apart from this audio drama thing, in terms of passing information to particularly communities, we have to deal with sources, trusted sources. Particularly in Freetown, the sources for listening to health messages are through radio. But if it is drama, we have drama groups like Freetown Players, which we actually use. They are definitely always invited into gatherings to be able to discuss issues, current issues, using drama. Even when we are having open days on issues of education, on issues of health, and when these meetings are there, they invite them. So these are trusted groups of drama groups that we invited. Now that we have realized that using social media can also be useful, and WhatsApp was utilized to be able to do it, we can scale it up to counter misinformation even across the country, because there are several issues relating to misinformation within this country and probably even abroad, and we think we can use WhatsApp. Specifically now is about COVID. There have been several misinformation relating to that, and that led to the hesitancy and probably low uptake of the vaccines that were supposed to be there. And also in Sierra Leone, we realized that in 2014, 2015, there was a horrendous outbreak of what's the disease now?
Ebola.
Yeah, Ebola, yes. How could I forget it? It killed so many people in this country. So probably if we had had WhatsApp messages done that way, probably people would have taken complete action to avoid the infection. However, there are limitations to this in terms of human capacity. Many people are not trained in terms of the production of drama informations, even within our universities. That could take a long time for you to be able to prepare, even for this simple misinformation between a typhoid and malaria. It took us some time to prepare it. And of course, it deals with money and time to be able to do that. So we think that recommendation that people will focus, even within the country, to be able to do it. We have to identify the context of the misinformation so that it becomes much more rare and within the community. You know, like we are saying, to be able to produce high quality dramas, there should be capacity involved. So those are the things. And probably what we would not put also is that there are several other pieces of misinformation, particularly in the health sector, also in education, but probably this methodology can be utilized across to be able to do it. Thank you very much.